Akshat, am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Yes,
Kamini,
yes, I can hear you.
you can hear me.
Yeah.
Okay. Actually, अभी जो हमें बात करनी है ना, वो बिल्कुल डिफॉल्टर के बारे में बात करनी है। तो बिल्कुल डिफॉल्टर की जो डेफिनेशन है, उसका एक एक पॉइंट लेके, उससे जो क्राइटेरिया दिए हैं, वो एक एक पॉइंट लेके हम उसके ऊपर कुछ कमेंट्स करेंगे और वो कमेंट्स हमें जो हमें PIL फाइल करना है या गवर्नर को जो प्रेजेंटेशन देना है उसके लिए हम यूज करेंगे। तो किसके पास है वो रेडी? एनीबॉडी कैन रीड?
Yes, sir, I am reading it.
हाँ,
Should I start?
हाँ, you start.
See, this circular was published by Reserve Bank of India on 1st July 2015.
हाँ,
The purpose of the circular was to put in place a system to disseminate credit information pertaining to willful defaulter for cautioning banks and financial institutions so as to ensure that further bank finance is not made available to them.
okay.
After this, they have given the introduction. Pursuant to the instructions of the Central Vigilance Commission for collection of information on willful default of rupees 25 lakhs and above by Reserve Bank of India and dissemination to reporting banks and financial institutions, a scheme was framed by the RBI with effect from 1st April 1999, under which the banks and all notified All India financial institutions were required to submit RBI the detail of willful defaulter. This scheme was modified in May 2002 based on the recommendation of the working group on willful defaulter, which was also revised from time to time. Then they have given the three important definitions of a lender, a unit and a willful default. So first I will read the definition of a lender. The term lender covers all banks and financial institutions to which any amount is due, provided it is arising on account of any banking transaction, including off-balance sheet transactions such as derivative, guarantees and letter of credit. After this, they have given the definition of the term unit. The term unit includes individual, juristic persons and all other forms of business enterprises, whether incorporated or not. In case of business enterprises, banks and financial institutions may also report the names of those persons who are in charge and responsible for the management of the affairs of the business enterprise. Then third, they have given the definition of a willful default. A willful default would be deemed to have occurred if any of the following events is noted. A. The unit has defaulted in meeting its repayment obligation to the lender even when it has the capacity to honor the said obligation.
Okay, now let us see.
Yeah.
Even when he has a capacity to pay to the lender. Now, how do we decide the capacity? Now, for example, if I am under stress, I deposit 100 rupees in the bank. Bank adjusts entire 100 rupees. Now, if I do not allow bank, I have no right to hold the bank. Bank will take that money out. Now, how do I run my company?
Right.
How do I pay the salaries? How do I pay the electricity bill? And if I do not able to pay that, my unit is going to be closed. So, while defining the capacity, the definition should have been more clear. The capacity should be after the payment of all the essential requirements of the unit to keep on running. That also should include the salary to be paid to the owner or the entrepreneur or to the key person, maybe at an agreed rate or agreed amount with the bank in advance. Because if the entrepreneur remains hungry, if he is not paid, why he should run the unit? So that point has to be also made very clear, and this part of the definition or this criteria of the definition has to be modified accordingly.
Okay,
Do you want to say something, Kamini?
No, sir.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Okay. Next.
Shall I?
But what is the one here? So classifying among the willful default. Hello? Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
What is the basic purpose of classifying any account as a willful default?
It is already made clear that willful defaulter should not use banks or the financial institutions to misuse their funds, which are the public funds. So once they are declared to all the banks, the other banks will be cautioned. That is the purpose.
I will read the next point. Second point says the unit has defaulted in meeting its repayment obligation to the lender and has not utilized the finance for the lender and has not utilized the finance from the lender for the specific purpose for which the finance was availed, but has diverted the funds for other purposes.
I think it has got two parts. Part 1, he has defaulted, and part 2, he has diverted. Does it mean that if he has diverted but he has paid the payment, he is not a willful defaulter? The other aspect is that if he has diverted the funds, whether those funds have been diverted, for what purpose it has been diverted. For example, I will tell you very clearly. Bank is giving you term loan as well as working capital. Many times it has happened, the repayment of term loan has started before the project has started. And bank itself has adjusted the EMIs against the disbursement of working capital. Now here they will say that there is a diversion of short-term funds to the long-term purpose. That is again a wrong thing. So this definition, this part of the definition also has to be seen from the practical point of view. The diversion of funds, for example, the promoter is envisaging or he has received certain orders. He goes to the bank, he tells bank that I have got an order, I need an additional working capital. Bank has told him that yes, you submit the proposal, we will do it. And this doing it starts from 15 days to 15 months. Now during this period, with an assumption that bank is going to do something for me, if as a borrower, I have used those funds in consideration of those orders to be executed, do you mean that it is a diversion of funds? If that is the case, then the whole purpose of declaring borrower as a willful defaulter has lost the real meaning. What do you think?
Yes, sir,
Can
you
you
are absolutely right.
can you put more light on this point? Can you make it more clear?
No, the diversion of funds means, for example, as I told you again, I take the same example. I have got a capacity to manufacture, say, 100 pieces per month. I got an order of another 200 pieces per month. I have gone to the bank, I have showed the order to the banker. Banker said that yes, we will support you. Now this order is, I have to execute within a time limit. In order to maintain that time limit, I parallelly work with the bank, I parallelly work with my business. So some money I may use for increasing the capacity. Now that will become a long-term payment. For that, I may use some part of the working capital to do that. Now, if I have used working capital to purchase one additional machinery or put an order to purchase an additional machinery, because that machinery may come after 2 months or 3 months, in anticipation, if I have purchased an order, I have paid 10%, 20% to that machinery out of my working capital limit. This is a willful diversion of funds. There is a diversion of funds, but is it a willful diversion of funds?
No, it cannot be termed as a willful diversion.
Yes.
It is no, it cannot be termed as a willful diversion, but it is a circumstantial requirement for which the borrower had to do it.
Yes.
And sir, that also the borrower has done to serve the bank. Ultimately, whatever he is earning, he is paying the interest to the bank only, no?
Yeah, he is paying interest to the bank. But then, when he makes a default, bank will not take the responsibility. They have dragged its sanctioning of the limit for 1 year, for 6 months. Now, because of that, he has become defaulter. That banker will conveniently forget. This tool of willful defaulter, ये जो मंकी के हाथ में आपने आग लगाने का कोलित दे दिया है. Bankers, the entire system has been defined in such a way that bankers are not at fault. It is only the borrower who is at fault. And banker is nowhere responsible for any kind of nonsense they do.
Dr. Sir, what I was saying is that this particular point talks about diversion of fund. Now, before proceeding to the third parameter which deals with siphoning of fund, below they have also defined diversion of fund. So now let us check that aspect together with this point, so it will be more clear.
Yes.
So what are they saying in diversion of funds? The term diversion of funds referred to at paragraph above should be constituted to include any one of the undernoted occurrences. A. Utilization of short-term working capital funds for long-term purposes not in conformity with the terms of sanction.
Correct. Now, the example which I gave you, it may not be in confirmation of earlier sanction. But has he diverted the funds outside the unit, outside the business of the company, outside the business of the unit? They are looking only in black and white. Next
reads as deploying borrowed funds for purposes oblique activities or creation of assets other than those for which the loan was sanctioned.
So you read this again.
Deploying borrowed funds for purposes and activities or creation of assets are those for which the loan was sanctioned.
Yeah.
This is the point.
So what it mean in that case?
It means that if I am utilizing the fund for any other purpose or creating any other asset other than that was mentioned in my sanction letter.
So again you take my earlier example.
Yeah.
If I have created assets for the company and in conformity with the objective of the loan which I have obtained, I think it should not be considered as a willful defaulter.
Yeah.
I am manufacturing sanitizer. I am manufacturing 1,000 pieces per day. If I am using some funds to improve my capacity to 2,000 sanitizers, in view of the order which are there in my hand, or in anticipation of certain demand, which is justifiable under the circumstances, if you consider that as a willful defaulter, is it a progressive business? How can you confine everything in black and white? There is certain grey areas. Do you agree with me?
Absolutely, sir.
Kamini?
Yeah, I have a question here that if a account is classified as a willful default, is that account permanently a willful default account, or it can come out of that level after a few years?
No, I think there is no provision of coming out of willful default.
Okay.
It is absolutely at the mercy of the bank.
Yes. Sir, next point I will read. Transferring borrowed funds to the subsidiaries and group companies or other corporates by whatever modalities.
Read again.
Transferring borrowed funds to the subsidiaries, group companies or other corporates by whatever modalities.
If that is the case, they should not take the guarantees of the subsidiaries and the corporate group companies. If they are outside this should be treated as a willful default or diversion of funds. Then why are they responsible for the entire funds? Again, there has to be seen a purpose for which it has been done. You know, the willful defaulter word itself has got one important ingredient, that is an intention. Whatever the act I do, whether those acts are intentionally to defraud the bank, if that intention is proved, that to beyond doubt, then only he should be considered as a willful defaulter.
Is there any transparent mechanism? Is there any transparent mechanism to find out that the banker has done due diligence properly before identifying and classifying a particular account as a willful defaulter account?
Actually, the provision must be there in the definitions. But who is observing it? I am the person, I am the judge of my own complaint. I am the judge of my own cause. So it is entirely at the bank The entire mechanism of willful defaulter is based on wrongful basic principles of natural justice. If I am accused, I should be heard. Now, who should hear me? The complainant is hearing me. The complainant is taking the accused, hearing me, and the complainant is taking a decision. The complainant is allowed to give me a punishment. What a nonsense! It is the sheer nonsense of mechanism.
Dr. Saab, I wanted to tell 2 points here. That they are saying that transferring borrowed funds to subsidiaries and group companies by whatever modalities. Now, when the business is in trouble, the promoter gets in the money through his personal resources or through his subsidiary. That time the banker is not telling anything.
Yes, correct.
But that same money when the promoter wants to, and this is a practical problem which we are facing, that same money when the promoter is taking back to repay.
I have also seen if the subsidiary company and the holding company both are financed by the same bank.
Yeah.
Okay. Now subsidiary company is doing well and there is a problem in the holding company. The same banker will suggest, I will give you a limit in subsidiary company, take that limit and pay here. Is it not happening? Not only that, they will tell you, do you have some other assets? Do you have some other business? We will give loan in those assets. We will go loan in those cases. Use that money, put into this and avoid this NPA. Now, these bankers can promote. But the same thing, if the promoter does on his own, or it happens reversely, the promoters have been accused. Next.
And sir, one more thing I wanted to add here, as Madam asked that is there any transparent mechanism? So, what the bankers are doing, they are issuing a show cause to which the promoter is giving a reply. In the reply, giving an opportunity in 50% cases for the promoter to come and talk to them, and in 50% cases without giving that opportunity. Now, in the cases where the promoter goes to the bank to give his representation, he is threatened and penalized in a way कि अभी तो तुमको विलफुल करने वाले हैं, फिर तुमको हम सीबीआई में भेजेंगे, फिर एसएफआईओ में भेजेंगे, फिर ईडी में भेजेंगे. They are, instead of calling them for an opportunity, they are calling them to threaten.
That is what I said.
Yeah.
ये बंदर के हाथ में पुलिस दिया हुआ है. ये बंदर पहले से दारू पी के नौटंकी करता है, ऊपर से हाथ में उसको पुलिस दे दिया. ये सिस्टम ही इतनी गंदी है. ये सिस्टम का बेस ही क्या है कि बैंकर्स आर नॉट एट फॉल्ट. Banker is also doing a business. Businessman is also doing a business. Banker business will depend upon the businessman's success, which bankers are forgetting.
Don't you think there should be some independent from various fields who can understand the borrower's problem, who can understand the banker's point of view, who can identify the wrongs done by the bank and also the borrower. It's not always the borrower is at fault or the bank is at fault. It can be two-way incidences which have happened. There should be an independent body from different fields to understand the both parties and come to a proper conclusion.
Now, presently what is happening, Presently you are getting a notice. You may reply that notice. After notice they will call you for hearing, and after hearing they will declare you as a willful defaulter. Now the entire process they are using to arm twisting. As I told you, complainant and the people of complainant, they are the judge of you. They are making the judgment against the accused. So this is not a fair way. This is absolutely unfair way of working. And the worst part is that if you go to a High Court by way of writ, the present mechanism of the High Court is that they will see what is there in the guideline. Now this kind of foolish guidelines are there. No High Court is ready to look into the intention-wise definition of willful defaulter. And if at all High Court want to give some relief, they will pay 10%, pay 25%, pay 50%. Then what is the nonsense going on? The entire mechanism, the law-making body, the banking system, the law execution system, everything is working on an unnatural way of dealing with the borrower. I am not talking about those borrowers who are genuinely willful defaulters. Those who are genuinely fraud, I am not talking about them. I am talking about those people, particularly MSME people. Their loyalty level is very high. Their subconscious does not permit them to do wrongs. There may be few people, I agree, but generally it is not there. And the legal principle is that, the fundamental legal principle is that, सौ गलत लोग छूट गए तो भी चलेगा, लेकिन एक सही आदमी पनिश नहीं होना चाहिए, या उल्टा है.
Dr. Saab, one more thing I wanted to ask you that since we are talking about MSME and SME borrowers, now mainly they are into multiple banking or sole banking over generations and over large number of years. So, for example, if an MSME is associated with a bank for say 30 years, 29 years when the MSME borrower was paying the interest through beg, borrow, steal, by adopting all the possible ways, even if he is in a problem, he was not a willful defaulter. But in 1 year when he is unable to pay, the bank sends him a notice and harasses him by declaring willful defaulter. So do you think that there has to be also a guideline or some kind of advisory for at least MSME sector?
That is what I mean is that you have to see the intentions, you have to see the circumstances. If last 30 years I have been paying, 20 years I have been paying, it may happen that during certain phase I may go through some bad phase. My livelihood as a businessman is also coming from my business only. Now, if I need personally certain requirement of my own for my own survival, so if I utilize certain portion of that, calling me as a willful defaulter is an inhuman mechanism. And by killing this kind of entrepreneurship, or by killing this way the units which are capable to contribute to the GDP, bankers are not only creating harm to the unit, but they are creating harm to themselves. In my opinion, the strict action should be taken against the bankers who are, for their personal benefits or personal whims and wishes, are exploiting this kind of borrowers by putting them as a willful defaulter and threatening them of any kind of legal action, CBI, or any kind of economic offences. More than those kind of people, please mind my language, but this kind of bankers are देशद्रोही. वो देश का नुकसान कर रहे हैं. Next.
Sir, now we will come back to the definition of willful defaulter.
Yeah.
Point number 3. The unit has defaulted in meeting its payment repayment obligation to the lender and has siphoned off the funds so that the funds have not been utilized for the specific purpose for which the finance was availed, nor are the funds available with the unit in the form of other assets.
Again,
Here they are talking about, they are saying the unit has defaulted in meeting its payment repayment obligation to the lender and has siphoned off the funds so that the funds have not been utilized for the specific purpose for which the finance was availed of, nor are the funds available with the unit in the form of other assets.
Other assets. Now, these other assets, how do you define those other assets? Whether those should be in the name of the company, those should be in the name of the guarantors also. Now, if those are in the name of the guarantor, those are in the name of the company, and there is asset creation, even in that case, the definition of willful defaulter should not apply. But this provision is hardly being used. Before using this provision, they will point out the other thing that you have used the funds, short-term funds to long-term purpose, long-term funds to short-term purpose. So this provision they are really not applying. Again, in this provision also, the intention should be the key factor. What is the intention? Next.
The unit has defaulted in meeting its payment repayment obligation to the lender and has also disposed of and removed the movable fixed assets or immovable property given for the purpose of securing term loan without the knowledge of the bank/lender.
I think prima facie this is accepted.
Okay. Further, it states the identification of the willful default should be made keeping in view of the track record of the borrowers and should not be decided on the basis of isolated transactions and incidents.
But this is only the guideline which is not followed.
Yeah. The default has to be
practically it is not followed.
Yeah. But sir, these 3 lines are very important, but no banker is following it.
No banker is following it.
Yeah. The default has to be categorized as willful, but must be intentional, deliberate and calculated. As you said, they are mentioning this as an advisory in the circular, but the bankers are interpreting the circular also to their convenience.
Yes. Well, again I come back to who is the deciding authority?
Bank.
Bank. who has a vested interest in the whole process? How can they be the judge of their own cause? Next.
So, sir, here three important definitions which the circular has mentioned are getting over.
Tell me.
Further, now they have written about the cutoff limits.
What?
They are now mentioning about the cutoff limit that the penal measures indicated at para 2.5, which is below. Now, what are those penal measures? The penal measures are that no additional facilities should be granted by any bank or financial institutions to the listed willful defaulter.
No, that is again the it's an extension of the earlier thinking mechanism that willful defaulter है उसको पूरा मारना ही है.
हाँ. Then they are saying the legal process wherever warranted against the borrowers, guarantors, and foreclosure of the recovery of dues should be initiated expeditiously. The lenders may initiate criminal proceedings against willful defaulter wherever necessary.
Yeah, where somebody has done something seriously wrong, criminal proceeding should be done. But the process of defining him as a willful defaulter or accused, as a guilty, that itself has to be reviewed.
So here I want to tell you one thing.
If he is found wrong, it has to be punished. It's a part of punishment. Now, one more thing which I have normally seen in many of the willful defaulter notices is that the borrower has operated the bank account with some other bank. Now, merely doing any operation in some other bank, how can it amount as a willful defaulter? To run my business, I may need to open a different account in different bank for my collection purpose as well as certain my essential payments. To make my essential payments, you have already closed my doors when I am under stress. Now to survive myself, if I have to go to some other bank and open a new account, you call me as a willful defaulter. Do you mean that as a business unit, I have no right to survive? I have to die at the hands of the bank? What kind of legal system and what kind of society in which we are living?
And the borrower has to take such measures of opening an account in some other bank is because the current banker, the current lender is going to adjust and appropriate all the dues overdue amount towards the recovery and does not allow the borrower to use a single paisa for his ongoing operational needs. For example, salary, utility bills. That is the reason why he is forced. The bankers are forcing him to adopt such measures. If the bank is liberal enough to understand their problems and allow them basic operations, give them some cut-off limit. For example, 20% or 15% can be utilized for their operational purposes and the balance can be adjusted towards the overdues, then no borrower needs to operate a different account. The basic thing which every banker or every bank should understand and not just classify him or her that account as a willful because he or she is operating elsewhere.
That is the problem. You are not allowing me to leave. मुझे जीने का अधिकार नहीं दे रहे हो और मैंने जीने का प्रयास किया तो आप मेरा कत्ल कर रहे हो. This is absolutely wrong.
The borrower is doing nothing to hide from the bank. The borrower is doing only for a simple reason that he wants to run the unit. He just cannot check out the employees. He just cannot stop the fees. If he does that, his unit is definitely going to be shut down the next day. It's very, very clear. But it is the bankers who are very clearly forcing them to do all these things.
Now, in this context, my suggestions are as follows. First of all, change the mechanism of declaring somebody as a willful defaulter. Intention should be the paramount criteria to declare somebody as a willful defaulter. It should be a paramount. Second thing, clearly, while doing certain acts as defined in the circular, the borrower should not be considered as a willful defaulter if the banker has compelled him to do that. The responsibility of the banker in the whole process has to be defined very clearly, also in terms of time limits. So-called discretions which are given to the top bankers are very commonly misused. That's why they have got certain favored borrowers. आज जो इतने बड़े-बड़े स्कैम सामने आ रहे हैं, is it only one-sided? Are the bankers are not responsible for that? What actions and what mechanisms, not only action against those bankers, but what is the precautionary mechanism has been taken? You have got TRT Act, you have got SMEs Act, you have got IBC. Do you have a charter for bankers? The real culprits and the partners to this kind of offences are not caught. So the definition of willful defaulter has to be looked into a pragmatic manner. The mechanism of declaring somebody as a willful defaulter has to be also seen in a different light, and there has to be a mechanism to withdraw the declaration of willful defaulter by a set method of certain criteria which has to be independently verified and adjudicated. If that is done, I think most of the problems should be solved. Another important thing, if somebody has been declared as a willful defaulter, in IBC you are not allowing him to participate for the revival of the company. You are debarring him under section 29A. If he is paying back to the bank, if he is retaining the employment, if he is going to contribute to the GDP as usual, why not an opportunity to be given to him? It is a point which has to be thought. Do you agree with me?
Yes, sir.
Very much.
I think let us stop it here.
Okay.
We have covered the basic aspect of willful defaulter. That way, if you go through the entire circular, there will be so many other comments. But the gist of that entire thing we have covered.
Yes, sir.
Okay?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, sir. Thank you.